Welcome back to the book club. Today's video is going to be about Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is another book with a very cool cover art. I like the feel to it. It's got really nice, really bendy, really nice pages going on. I know that's probably the least important part about a book review, but it is something I appreciate as somebody who mostly enjoys reading physical books and not necessarily reading books on the Kindle unless I have to. Anyways, Foundryside is book one of the Founders Trilogy, which I picked up after reading and really enjoying The Tainted Cup, which I'll probably be talking about in a separate video. This is a book about basically a heist with a really cool magic system, a fun set of characters. Really, it was a fun book through and through. I enjoyed my time with it. I'm going to keep reading the trilogy. I did see something interesting on Goodreads, which is never a great sign. Which is that books 2 and 3 are actually lower rated than the first one. But I try not to let those ratings skew what my perception of the book was, because I had a lot of fun with the first book. It set up a lot of fun mysteries that I think the second and third books can tackle. So I'm interested in seeing where they're going. Now, about the book itself and about the author Robert Jackson Bennett, I think he does a great job creating a really interesting plot that keeps continually driving forward. It's kind of in the Brandon Sanderson realm of fantasy rather than the Steven Erikson Malazan kind of deeper, more tangled web stuff. The prose is very straightforward. The action is continual throughout. I think the pacing was really solid. And on top of that, the author created a really cool magic system that is either called scriving or scriving. I've been calling it scriving in my head. Where you can encode some you can write some runes on objects and encode a different meaning in them so that they perceive reality differently. And the idea is that if the object perceives its reality differently, then it will actually be different, which is like an interesting philosophical kind of magic system, but I think it works out really well. So as an example, you can scrive a wooden wall to think that it's a stone wall, and then it will actually work as a stone wall and be a lot harder and not break as easily, or maybe not even burn, because it is to the wall itself stone. So there's a lot of interesting things that go on with this magic system throughout the book, and it sort of sets up the whole heist narrative that goes on. I think the main character was pretty fun and interesting. I think overall it was very lighthearted kind of story. I don't think there was really anything too deep necessarily or too crazy going on. But it was generally just a very fun book that was interesting to pick up and read every time. There's a lot of, plot threads that are left for future books. But also I think the first book wrapped out really nicely. There's kind of two different overarching types of trilogies. One of them is books that really can stand alone, or parts of the trilogy that can really stand alone as their own. And then trilogies where you kind of have to read books 2 and 3 to get the full enjoyment. I think almost always you need to read books 2 and 3 to get the full enjoyment. But here, actually, frankly, if I stopped reading after Foundryside like I have currently, I'm actually very satisfied with where the story's at. I don't need to keep reading, but I actually just want to, because I think there's some mysteries that are added in this book that are going to be interesting to keep reading about. Now, I've said a lot of praise so far. I do really enjoy this book. One thing that, or maybe a couple things that I didn't necessarily love that much, or I think are areas where people can bounce off of it, are, one is that I think the prose is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and sometimes it's a little awkward. There's some sentences that I read where I just kind of felt like the sentence construction was off. I'm no English major. That's not my background at all. So I think that means even more that if I notice that something was phrased awkwardly, or I'm kind of surprised the way something was written, it maybe means that, I don't know, there's some amateurness or something to the prose. I don't mean to I don't want to demean the author. I think it's a great book, and it's not necessary that your prose is on point in order for me to enjoy it. It's just something that some people are going to see and they're not going to enjoy it as much. It's not like Guy Gavriel Kay writing poetically. It's not deep philosophical musings. It is really straight and to the point. It gets the point across really well. It's sometimes a little awkward, but it is what it is. I also think that some of the character dialogue is really plot driven versus feeling like it comes from the characters themselves. Again, in like the Sanderson style of fantasy, I think that works perfectly well, where everything's just about driving the plot forward. It's about the action. It's about the events. The characters maybe don't have as much depth, but I think there's still very unique characters throughout that play a role. They're fun on their own. And it's interesting when they all work together to like pull off this big heist. And I think the last maybe negative point that I have here is that this is actually something that happens in the Tainted Cup too. So maybe it's just the author's style. Maybe it's something that appears in all of his books. But there's just a random kind of romance thrown in, where it's not like it was unearned, but it just like if it didn't exist, if it was cut from the book, there would be nothing of value lost. I didn't really care about it at all. It's fine. I'm happy for the characters that got a little relationship, a little romance going on. Maybe that's going to be expanded on in the next 2 books. I guess we'll see. But to me, it just felt like, do you have to always have a little bit of a romance arc in every book? A lot of books tend to do it. So maybe the answer is yes. Maybe that's what the readers want. I could take it or leave it. It doesn't take away points really for me in my book. It's just like, why was that there? It's kind of the least interesting thing. When I'm reading the conclusion to the book, I'm like, I don't actually care if these 2 characters ever get to kiss or hold hands or whatever. It's just, not my cup of tea. But overall, I would say if you like a heist story, if you like interesting magic systems where the magic is really, 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 really shapes the world, it defines how the characters interact with the world, it defines how the heist actually works. It's not a standard heist because objects in this universe can be told that they're different things, and that has very unique outcomes. I think this is a book for you. If you're looking for like a hard magic system that is well thought out, it feels really fleshed out, even though there's still new things that you get thrown that don't feel like, oh, the author just needed a convenient excuse. It actually feels earned, which I feel a lot when I'm reading Brandon Sanderson books. I keep bringing that up, but I think that's a very close parallel in my mind to the sort of overall style of the magic system in the book. So if you're looking for a fun book like that, I think this is a great read. I'm going to keep reading, and we'll see how I feel about books 2 and 3. I'm hoping that, as long as they stay as fun as this book was, I think that it's still going to work well for me. I'm hoping that there's some interesting payoffs with some of the stuff that gets set up in this book. I always enjoy seeing where those things end up and how the author weaves those together. This isn't a review of The Tainted Cup, but it's another popular book by this author that I will have a video about eventually. I'm very curious how the author does his trilogy, so that's another reason why I really want to read books 2 and 3. I think that's going to sort of inform me if I should be super hyped about the other books in the Tainted Cup series, or if I'm going to be maybe disappointed and maybe he does book 1s really well. I'm hopeful that books 2 and 3 are going to knock it out of the park, but we will see. Let me know what your thoughts are below. If you read this book and enjoyed it, if you read this book and hated it, let me know why in the comments below, and I will see you next time.